Number 10. Call of Duty Rivals. A Brazilian esports player who specialized in Call of Duty was brutally murdered inside her home by a rival player. According to ESPN Brazil, as well as reports from the police, Oliveira Bueno da Silva, known by her online alias as Sol, was butchered by a guy named Guilherme Alves Costa. His online alias was Flashlight. Well, Flashlight broke into Oliveira's house and stabbed her to death. It all started several weeks before the murder. The two players met online, fighting on opposing teams. Guilherme allegedly invited Oliveira to his home as part of a joint competition. That was the first time they made contact in real life. 2 weeks after they met in person, something snapped in Guilherme's brain. He began to plot exactly how he would massacre his rival. And while sure, lots of people get upset with the people they're playing games with, Guilherme took it to a whole new level of crazy. He actually went through with his murder plot. After he went to her house and stabbed her with a knife, he then posted a video of the woman's body on WhatsApp. In the video, the murderer can even be heard laughing. When questioned by the police as to his motive, Guilherme basically said that he was bored in life, he didn't have any goals, and he didn't like being bested by a female player. He was wildly unstable, surrendering voluntarily to the police just 30 minutes after the slaying. He's now being charged with femicide, a kind of hate crime murder. Number 9. Skyrim Killer. Jin Kid is famous for doing impressions on TikTok and making Skyrim videos. He's also now famous for murdering his wife and her friend. Jin Kid is really named Ali Nasser Abulaban. At the time of his arrest, he had over 1 million followers on TikTok. He's now sitting in a cell, waiting for his preliminary hearing that will take place in January of 2022. According to NBC, the police discovered the bodies of Anna Abdulaban and Rayburn Barron in an apartment in San Diego's East Village. Anna was Jin Kid's husband, and she had been shot once in the forehead. A single bullet to the brain was enough to kill her. But Anna's friend Rayburn was discovered with 3 bullets in the head and neck. Why kill his wife? She was having a romantic relationship with her friend and was planning to end her marriage to the TikTok star. She had even gone so far as to kick him out of the home. But as a professional gamer, he wasn't about to just be dumped like a chump. He went back to the apartment, vandalized it, and installed an application on his daughter's phone that would allow him to listen to what was happening in the apartment. He returned to the hotel he was staying at, activated the app, and heard his wife and her new boyfriend laughing at him. At that point, it didn't matter how many followers he had, or how rich he'd become from playing Skyrim. He raced back to the apartment and killed both of them. Number 8. Bad Brooklyn Baby. In Brooklyn, a mother's boyfriend has been charged with killing her baby just because the baby interrupted his gaming session. His name is Ricardo Price, 23. He's facing homicide charges for the death of Royalty Kemp. She was only 4 months old. According to what the mother told police, Price got so angry when the baby cried that he abused it. He even picked the baby up and threw her at the wall of the apartment in anger. There really is no silver lining to this horrific series of events. The mother had met Ricardo Price on a dating app the year before and had allowed him to move in with her. But clearly, it wasn't a very good idea. He was disturbingly obsessed with games and would rage anytime she or her baby interrupted him. And finally, his last outburst proved to be deadly. The child was taken to Woodhull Hospital, then transferred to the Bellevue Hospital in Manhattan. The doctors said Royalty suffered a brain injury, a fractured skull, and internal bleeding. There was nothing they could do to save her, and she died on July 1st. The day after the baby was brought to Bellevue was when the police finally got involved. Believe it or not, the mother never even went to the police following the incident. It was the hospital who had to call the cops, who thankfully arrested Ricardo Price and locked him up. Number 7. Console Wars. In Aurora, Colorado, a gamer was murdered in the parking lot of a McDonald's restaurant while trying to sell a gaming console. According to Matt Longshore with the Aurora Police Department, Andy Billinger was shot at 6:30 p.m. by a person who he had met on the internet. They previously agreed to meet in the McDonald's parking lot to hand over the piece of gaming equipment. The guy who did the shooting wanted to get his hands on the gaming console so bad that he set up a premeditated murder. The second that Andy pulled out the console, he was shot dead. The shooter grabbed the console, and he left Andy in the parking lot to bleed to death. Andy's longtime girlfriend said that he sold all kinds of items online to help support his mother. Times were tough, so he decided to sell his treasured console. But unfortunately for him, he picked the wrong buyer. But here's where things get really wild. Last we heard, the police were still searching for the man responsible for the murder. Even though the shooter had set up the sale online, something you would assume could easily lead the police back to him, they have still been unable to track the crazed gamer down or identify him. What's your worst experience trying to sell something online? Let us know all about it in the comments. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. An online friend. Breck Bednar was an English teenager from Surrey who was murdered in 2014. Breck was a student at the St. Bede School in Red Hill. He was a member of the Air Training Corps, and he frequently attended St. John the Evangelist Church. In other words, he was a perfectly ordinary guy and a positive member of his community. He also really enjoyed playing video games after school. He was passionate about gaming, like so many young people are these days. But here's where things get dark. Breck's mother had started to limit his access to his electronics. His personality was changing, she said. He was starting to refuse to go to church. He was obsessed with video games, and he never wanted to leave the house. The perfectly ordinary boy began going a little crazy. It all had something to do with somebody he was playing games online with for a few months. This individual was named Lewis Daines, 18 years old. Breck's parents even called the police to report that their son was in danger because of Daines' bad influence. But naturally, the police couldn't do much about a random online persona. On February 17, 2014, approximately 2 months after Breck's parents complained to the police, the two gamers met for the first time in real life. Breck traveled to Lewis's house in a taxi. Several hours later, photos of his dead body appeared on social media. As it turns out, Lewis was a reclusive, crazy person. He had Asperger's syndrome. He had been living alone ever since he was 16 in an apartment that his grandparents owned, and he was mentally ill. He had been plotting Breck's murder for weeks. When Breck finally arrived at his house, he butchered him in what was described as an extremely cruel and unusual manner. He then uploaded photos of the dead body online and waited for the police to come and arrest him. After the murder, he got life in prison. Number 5. In-game currency. A 17-year-old boy in Nepal borrowed some money from his friend to purchase some additional features in a mobile game he was playing. Anyone who's ever played a mobile game will know just how horribly addicting they are. Candy Crush, for example. Have you ever played it? Well, this kid was way in over his head. He just couldn't stop. The news never did say what game he was playing, but it was important enough that he poured all his money into it. When the friend whom he'd borrowed money off came looking to get paid back, that's when things turned ugly. The friend realized that the gamer was not planning to pay him back. He proved incapable of spending money on anything other than this game. On March 10th, Javan Kunte tried to get his friend drunk before asking for his money back. He thought maybe if the gamer was wasted, he would finally hand over the cash. But getting him drunk didn't work and only made things worse. The two got into an argument, and Javan Kunte slit the victim's throat. He could have just paid the money back instead of pouring it all into his game, but instead, he ended up dead, and his friend wound up in jail for murder. Number 4. Meth and PUBG. Yet another gamer broke down and started shooting people, this time on the other side of the world. A gamer in the city of Lahore, Pakistan, opened fire on his family when they tried to do an intervention on him. The intervention was half about video games and half about crystal meth. According to the local reports, the young gamer was terribly addicted to both PUBG and ice. He spent all his time doing methamphetamine and playing his game. His family was understandably distressed. He had gotten divorced from his wife. His life was spiraling down the drain, and all he cared about was his video game and his drugs. When his family tried to sit him down and talk things through, he wasn't having any of it. He freaked out and opened fire at all the family members who had gone into his house. He shot his brother, his sister, a random person who had just been walking by, and his sister-in-law. The only one who didn't die from the gunshot wounds was the victim's mother, though she was taken to the hospital in critical condition. Lahore police arrested the crazed murderer, who'd likely only killed his family because he was hopped up on dope and irritated that they were preventing him from playing his game. It was a quadruple murder, and sadly for the addict, there probably won't be any PUBG in jail. Number 3. Losing the tournament. A rival between a couple of video game enthusiasts in Florida ended in death. Eli Clayton, 21, and Taylor Robertson, 27, were local experts on Madden NFL. According to the police, David Katz from Baltimore shot both these men dead in a brutal attack outside the Jacksonville Landing Shopping and Entertainment Complex. The three men had been playing in the same esports tournament, but after losing a match, David Katz proved to be a sore loser. He became so furious that he pulled out a weapon and started shooting. Eli had played football in high school and was a new rising star in the esports community. Taylor was also a wildly successful esports player. He even won the Madden 17 Classic a few years ago. Their deaths came as a complete shock to everyone, but they weren't the only victims of the attack. When David Katz freaked out and started shooting, he managed to hit 13 other people. He started spraying into the crowd of spectators who had been watching the tournament. At least 11 were seriously wounded, while 2 others suffered minor injuries as they scrambled to run away. By the time the police arrived on scene, David Katz was already dead. Number 2. Subhuman. A man recently killed 4 people in Canada. These people were his family, his entire family. After he brutally massacred them, he went online and told his gaming friends that he slaughtered his loved ones because he didn't want them to know that he was a subhuman. Minhaj Zaman described himself as pathetic because of his addiction to video games. He also told his online gaming friends that for the past 3 years, he had been lying to his parents that he was studying in university. But in reality, he was hanging out at the mall 4 days a week and spending his time playing games. Amazingly, it was actually the people on Discord who rang the police and told them what happened. His friends on Discord asked for proof of what the man had done, and so Minhaj Zaman uploaded photos of the 4 dead people still sitting in his house. The guys on Discord quickly alerted the authorities, who later on made a rather unfortunate house call. They found Minhaj's parents, his sister, and his grandmother all dead. And all because he didn't want them to know that he was a lying gaming nerd. Number 1. The wrong address. A gamer who couldn't get enough Call of Duty has been sentenced to prison for a hoax gone terribly wrong. Casey Viner from Ohio pleaded guilty in court to making false phone calls to the Wichita police back in 2017. His false phone calls convinced officers to believe they were dealing with a person who had just shot and killed their own father. Why in the world would Casey do this? It all goes back to video games. Casey wanted the police to go to the home of another gamer called Shane Gaskill. Shane was his arch nemesis. The pair had gotten into an argument after Shane killed Casey's character in the game. Casey was so mad that he wanted the police to go to Shane's house and open fire on him. Shane gave Casey an address. It just wasn't for his own house. The address was for Andrew Finch, a completely unrelated person who had nothing to do with anything. When the police arrived at Andrew's house, believing they were dealing with a person who had just shot and killed their father, the confusion resulted in Andrew being gunned down in his own home by the cops. In the end, this was a horrible prank gone wrong by a gamer who didn't think he could get in any trouble from the safety of his own home. He has since been sentenced to 15 months in prison. However, the police who actually did the shooting never got in trouble. A lawsuit filed by the deceased family against the city of Wichita is still pending.
10. The Lipstick Bounty Hunters. 2013 was a bad year for female bounty hunters. In California, a man sued a group known as the Lipstick Bounty Hunters after they attacked him in an Arby's restaurant. The bounty hunters shot him with rubber bullets, zapped him with a stun gun, broke his nose, and blinded him with pepper spray. The victim, Daniel Duvall, had been trying to enjoy a nice and easy lunch at the fast food joint when the women, clad all in pink and wielding weapons, came out of nowhere and used everything they could to subdue him like he was the most wanted man in America. To be fair, Daniel was wanted. He had a $4,000 debt owed to a bail bond company related to charges of drugs and weapons, but he claimed it was no excuse to come after him with such unyielding force. It was all captured on video, too, and uploaded by the Lipstick Bounty Hunters. The women rushed the restaurant, hit him with a stun gun, shot him twice in the eyeball, basically straight up assaulted him. Yet even with all the excessive force, he still managed to get in his car and drive away. In response to the allegations of excessive force, the owner of the Lipstick Bounty Hunters, Teresa Galt, told News 8 that they didn't use enough force. She said that by law, they are allowed to use enough force as necessary to make an arrest. But of course, that's not true. They were slapped with a lawsuit for millions of dollars. 9. The wrong address. 3 bounty hunters have gotten into some serious trouble for kicking down a man's door and holding him at gunpoint. Not only did this trio of bounty hunters hold a gun on the man, but they pointed loaded weapons at his 16-year-old child. They may have gotten away with it if not for the fact that the man they were pointing their guns at had nothing to do with the person they were looking for. It was the wrong house entirely. Imagine the terror the man must have felt when 3 armed men broke through his front door in Nashville and started screaming at him. His poor kid, too. The accidental break-in happened on February 8, 2021. Bounty hunter Khalil Abdullah and 2 men under his employ charged into the home of Lavaris Comer looking for a totally different man named Tavares. They knocked him to the ground, held guns on him, and didn't listen to a word he said in protest. It took a few minutes, but they did eventually realize their mistake. At that point, the 3 bounty hunters turned and fled. Unfortunately for them, Lavaris ran out of his house and managed to get their license plate number as they were speeding off. 2 months after the incident, on April 15th, the bounty hunters were arrested and charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. They also faced aggravated criminal trespass charges. 8. Kidnapped for ransom. On November 4, 2021, a man in Aurora, Colorado was kidnapped at gunpoint in front of his family by a bounty hunter who seriously overstepped his boundaries. 5 men dressed in black and armed to the teeth stormed the apartment of Jose Salguero Martinez. They took him to a Best Western hotel in handcuffs and with a black hood over his head. Once they got him into the room, they phoned his aunt and told her that if she didn't give them $1,500 in cash, they were going to hand Jose over to the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It had nothing to do with a criminal case. It was a simple act of extortion. The aunt went to family members and managed to raise the $1,500 plus $250 to pay for the bounty hunter's hotel room. But when they brought the cash, the bounty hunters demanded another $5,000. The extra money was to make the warrants with ICE go away. It was only now that the family realized they were being extorted. They phoned the Denver police, who went to the hotel room and didn't do anything. They said they didn't see anything suspicious and walked away from the kidnapping. The kidnappers then took their hostage and moved to a different hotel. The family continued to contact the police and eventually convinced them to contact ICE. ICE said they had no reason for Jose to be arrested. They also don't use bounty hunters. The police had to go back to the hotel room, and 2 of the kidnappers were arrested and charged with second-degree kidnapping. The other 3 involved managed to get away and are still at large. 7. From hunter to killer. Palm Springs bounty hunter Fabian Hector Herrera is accused of fatally shooting a fugitive in front of police officers while trying to make an arrest. It happened on April 23, 2021, when Fabian entered the home of David Spahn at about 2:30 in the morning. He was there at the behest of a bail bond agency because David had allegedly disabled the GPS device he was supposed to be wearing in accordance with his bail agreement. He had originally been arrested on a misdemeanor charge for violating a protection order. But everything went south very quickly. David initially called the police because somebody was trying to break into his home. His alarm company was also reporting that there was a break-in. By the time officers arrived, Fabian had already entered the house and was in a standoff with David. David had picked up a knife and was waving it at Fabian and the police officers. When one of the cops told him to put the knife down, he refused. The officer then used a stun gun, but it didn't work. David continued to advance with the knife, and that was when the officer said, "Shoot." Fabian assumed he was talking about shooting the man with his gun, and so he opened fire on David. This is where things get convoluted and controversial. The police officer didn't want Fabian to shoot David with his gun, but assumed he had a stun gun. He thought he was talking to another cop, not a bounty hunter. And yet, prior to the incident, Fabian had identified himself as a bounty hunter and not an officer of the law. It was a very strange misunderstanding that left one man dead. Fabian has since been arrested and charged with murder, and so too has his mother for supplying David with a firearm and committing perjury. However, Fabian has pleaded not guilty. Plus, body cam footage of the incident proves the officer told Fabian to shoot. We're just waiting now for the case to go to trial. How do you think this case should turn out in court? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe before the end of the video. 6. Impersonating a U.S. Marshal. A supposed freelance bounty hunter was arrested after impersonating a federal law enforcement officer. It happened on November 22, 2021. Jeremy Hughes walked into a business in Berkeley County and told the employees he was a U.S. Marshal on a manhunt. He was carrying a shotgun and had a pistol holstered on his side. He was also wearing a shirt that had police written on it, as if this is the defining thing that makes people believe you're a cop. Jeremy told the employees of the business he was looking for a man dressed all in orange who had been spotted in the nearby woods. He then left the business and called them back 10 minutes later to say he had captured the individual. When the police caught up to Jeremy, they found he was in possession of several firearms and a whole heap of methamphetamine. They also learned that he had never arrested anyone and wasn't even a bounty hunter. He was just really high on meth and running around pretending to be either a freelance bounty hunter or a U.S. Marshal. What the heck? 5. The death of Randy Howard. In 2015, a bounty hunter shot a 65-year-old country singer named Randy Howard to death. Randy may have been an outlaw in his old age, but he was also a veteran musician who had released 7 records and performed on stage with some of the most influential country music stars in history. Randy was all about the country and all about the outlaw lifestyle. He even made sure that his final moments on Earth were spent in a shootout. It was the night of July 9th when bounty hunter Jackie Shell tried to serve Randy with a bench warrant on a failure to appear. The country music singer was facing charges on his 4th DUI, as well as some other criminal charges. Jackie had been authorized by a bail bonding company over 80 miles away in the Tennessee town of Dunlap to bring him in. Jackie, a former detective, easily tracked Randy down to the house where he lived by himself. At some point during the altercation, shots were fired. Randy ended up dead, and Jackie had to be taken to the hospital for emergency surgery. Jackie lived. He also managed to escape any kind of homicide charge because he claimed Randy shot first. The truth is that if the old country singer was drinking and alone and Randy tried barging into his home, that's probably exactly what happened. 4. Targeting the chief of police. In 2015, a bounty hunter accidentally targeted the police chief of Phoenix in one of the most botched raids imaginable. His name is Brent Farley, and he was arrested after he and some friends, fellow bounty hunters, swarmed the house of Police Chief Joseph Yonner. Everyone in the group was armed, they looked extremely dangerous, and they were looking for a drug suspect from Oklahoma. This is a really weird case. Brent was not and is not a licensed bounty hunter, and yet he and his crew of armed men showed up to the chief's house and refused to leave his property while threatening him with their weapons. How did this go so wrong? Well, Brent had gotten a tip via social media that the suspect he was looking for was at the house, but it was obviously fake. The tip given by a man named Aaron Bray. Aaron presumably thought it would be funny to send the bounty hunter to the house of the police chief. In the end, the bungled raid saw Brent get 2 years of probation, while Aaron was arrested and also sentenced to 2 years of probation. No one involved thought it was funny. 3. Dog the bounty hunter's Justin Behag. In 2020, Justin Behag from the show Dog the Bounty Hunter was arrested in Colorado in connection with violating probation. Probation he had been given because of a domestic violence charge. Justin is not actually related to Dog, but is the son of Moon Angel, the woman Dog allegedly started dating after Beth passed away in 2019. Justin was also on the wrong side of a feud between him and Lisa Chapman, Dog's daughter. She'd accused him of trying to steal her stepmom's ashes. It was Lisa Chapman who tipped off the Edgewater Police Department after she got a hold of videos showing Justin drinking alcohol, something he wasn't allowed to do on probation. She was the one who had officers sent to his house, where they found him drinking and smoking dope. Justin was arrested for violating his probation, but later released without any real repercussions. This was just one more dramatic twist in the story of America's favorite bounty hunter, who hasn't done much but caused drama since his TV show ended. 2. An illegal assault. In 2018, a pair of bounty hunters from North Carolina beat up a man named Charlie Levy and tried to arrest him. But according to the Galloway police in Tennessee, where the incident took place, the bounty hunters had no right to be there, nor did the victim have an active warrant. When Charlie opened the door to see who was banging on it, one of the bounty hunters grabbed his hand and put him in cuffs. They pulled him off his porch, jumped on him, and started beating him senseless for no reason. They broke his eye socket and shattered his nose as he lay under them screaming for help. Charlie's fiancée watched in horror from the doorway, then ran inside to get the phone and called the police. When the cops came, they arrested William Delaney and Todd Stubbs. The pair of bounty hunters were trying to extradite Charlie out of Memphis back to North Carolina on a bond forfeiture from the year before, but they weren't actually allowed to do this, and the whole mess landed them in jail on charges of aggravated assault and kidnapping. Poor Charlie, who had never seen the vicious assault coming, had to undergo surgery to get his face fixed from the brutal beating. 1. Bail agent shot down. Bounty hunter James Black from Lake Elsinore was gunned down by a rabid fugitive at a hotel in Moreno Valley. It happened on December 4, 2019. The bounty hunter had been trying to apprehend Chad James Green when everything went terribly wrong. James had managed to track Chad down to a sleazy motel, but when he went in for the arrest, Chad surprised him with a loaded weapon and shot the man to death, then leaped from a third-story window and ran away. It was a surprise ambush that left the father of 5 and a war hero dead in the last place he had probably wanted to die. Chad was identified as the shooter and police tracked him down to a business park. When they cornered him, Chad shot at the deputies. It turned into a gun battle, which left Chad dead, and all because Chad had skipped bail.
Number 10. Death in Costa Rica. Carla Stefaniak was on vacation in Costa Rica when she was killed. Carla was from the Miami Beach area and had gone on a trip with her sister-in-law, April Burton. They were there to celebrate Carla's birthday, but her sister-in-law had to return to Florida the day before Carla's flight. This left Carla alone for just 24 hours. The last time she was seen alive was when the two women said their goodbyes at the airport on November 27, 2018. Carla never made her flight home on April 28th. As it turned out, a security guard who'd been staying in the room next door to her was a brutal murderer. Her body was discovered partially buried and covered over in plastic bags near the Airbnb villa where they were both staying in San Jose. The police said her remains were riddled with stab wounds and she had suffered a serious blow to the head. The day of her death, Carla had been texting friends that it was raining out and that her power had been interrupted at her accommodation. Her last text was sent at 9 o'clock, local time. It was after that the security guard, identified as 32-year-old Bismarck Espinoza Martinez of Nicaragua, made his move. He attacked the woman and killed her completely unprovoked. But the security guard didn't cover his tracks, and he was arrested quickly. He's since been sentenced to 16 years in a Costa Rican prison. Number 9. Struck by lightning. A security guard in Indonesia got the shock of a lifetime when he was electrocuted on December 20th, 2021. It was a terrifying ordeal for the security guard, who had been walking around in the rain with an umbrella when he was struck by lightning. The umbrella acted like a lightning rod, attracting a great bolt of electricity that knocked the man to the ground. The security guard's name is Abdul Razid. He had been patrolling a rainy courtyard in the coastal Indonesian town of Cilincing, North Jakarta. His encounter with the bolt of lightning was captured on video. In the footage, he can be seen strolling through the rain with his umbrella. Then the lightning bolt zapped his umbrella, disintegrating it in a shower of sparks and sending the security guard falling to the ground. Luckily, there were other security guards in the area who saw what happened. They ran to his rescue, managed to get him to the hospital, and he survived. He suffered only minor burns to his hands and was discharged from the hospital 4 days later. Number 8. McDonald's security. A woman in Birmingham, England, was caught on video throwing her drink at a McDonald's security guard in front of the restaurant early on a Sunday morning in the summer of 2021. The woman appeared to be extremely wasted and had gone out of her way to pick a fight with the guard. In the shocking video footage, the woman can be seen walking to the front entrance of the restaurant, stopping in front of the security guard, then deliberately emptying her drink on her head. It's not exactly clear what made her think she could get away with this. You can tell in the footage it was a deliberate and malicious attack on behalf of the drunk woman. You can also see that it didn't turn out the way she had probably been hoping. The security guard was so mad that he grabbed her, pulled out a baton, and beat the snot out of her. Obviously, the security guard was also in the wrong here. He hit her once extremely hard with the baton, knocking her to the ground. He then proceeded to kick her while she was down, right in the face, and added a few more whacks with the baton for good measure. He walked away, seemingly satisfied, but the woman got up and shouted at him, and so he went in for a second round of beating. After the video of the attack went viral, the 47-year-old security guard was arrested for assault. Who do you think is in the wrong in this scenario? Number 7. Beaten with his own radio. A Delta Airlines security officer was viciously assaulted at JFK Airport in New York by a trio of savage women. The attack happened in a jetway in September of 2021. The security officer informed the women that they were not able to board their flight in San Juan, Puerto Rico. He said they were disoriented and visibly intoxicated and refused to properly wear their masks. The security officer notified the crew about the situation with the three, and the captain and other employees confirmed they were not allowed to fly. When he asked if they would please leave, they refused. The women became belligerent, screaming and shouting at him, and then attacked. When the three attacked, they managed to rip away the security guard's radio and then beat him violently with it. Poor guy was literally beaten with his very own radio, knocked to the ground on the jetway, and then kicked. When a gate agent came rushing to his assistance, the women then turned on him. They punched the guy in the face, knocking him to the ground, as well as continuing their vicious assault on the two men. Both had been treated at the hospital for serious injuries. Obviously, you can't get away with this kind of thing in an airport of all places. All three women were arrested and charged with assault. They're currently out on bail, but could each face 10 years in prison if convicted. Number 6. Shoplifting gone wrong. A security guard working for a Boston fashion retailer got in major trouble for the way he handled a shoplifter on June 9, 2019. The security guard, identified as Mohammed Khan, was charged with assault and battery on a child under the age of 14 after beating up an 11-year-old who had tried to shoplift. What did she try to steal? According to the victim's mother, Sharice Williams, her daughter had tried to get away with a package of socks. The preteen took the pack of socks, was on her way out the door, and the security guard grabbed her. This is obviously not an appropriate reaction for a security guard stopping a child or adult from stealing socks. He was under explicit orders from his employer not to ever lay hands on a customer, even a shoplifter. He had also been warned 4 times previously for inappropriate behavior. The young girl is now traumatized and is in counseling, according to her mother. The security guard is facing jail time. Number 5. Murder in Florida. Sasha Samsonen was killed by the person who was supposed to protect her. The 27-year-old Florida woman was murdered inside of her apartment in October of 2015 by none other than the security guard hired to keep her safe. His name is Michael Duxbury, and he's been charged with first-degree murder. Police found his fingerprints and footprints inside Sasha's home, directly connecting him to the murder. The unfortunate victim had returned home from a night out with her friends, but didn't get back to anybody the next day. Her friends became suspicious and called the cops. Officers were sent to her home, where they discovered Sasha's body, her clothes ripped, and the toilet seat left up. The killer had wrapped her in a comforter and left her on the bed. It didn't take much for the police to figure out exactly what happened. Sasha was drunk when she came home last night. Michael saw her as an easy victim, and he used his access as a security guard to let himself into her home and kill her. Number 4. Stabbed at Walmart. Ron Bevan was working as a security guard at a Walmart in Campbell River, British Columbia, for just over a month when he was stabbed. It was the holiday season, 2021, and people were stressed and aggressive, especially at Walmart. One particular customer was crazier than the rest. He wasn't adhering to the store's rules, and so Ron asked if he would please remove himself from the premises. Rather than do that, the man attacked with a blade. The blade hit Ron's stab-proof vest, but still slashed his skin beneath. It was lucky an ER nurse happened to be on the scene and was able to tend to Ron, who lost a lot of blood. He was whisked to the hospital and went on to make a full recovery. As for the attacker, his name is Nathan Sprout, and he's been charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Number 3. Impersonating a cop. A security guard bit off more than he can chew when he tried to impersonate an officer in March of 2020 and found himself being arrested. This bizarre case comes to us from Florida, where a security guard dressed up like an actual police officer tried to pull over an off-duty cop for speeding. Omar Ford was on his way home from his job as a security guard when a vehicle passed him at a very high speed. The cop appeared to be swerving, and Omar was worried that the driver was drunk. So he pulled up alongside the car with an intention of saying something to the driver, but as he was in the process of doing this, the car flashed its lights. It was an off-duty cop who was speeding down the road, and the whole thing blew up in Omar's face. The cop slowed down, got behind Omar's car, and then flashed his own lights. He pulled the security guard over and was shocked to see Omar was wearing a vest with Criminal Task Force written on it, equipped with a badge, gun, and taser. Criminal Task Force is the name of Omar's security business, but he still looked a lot like a cop. He looked enough like a real officer that a lot of ordinary people probably would have assumed he was some kind of authority. He may not have technically been trying to impersonate a police officer. He didn't pull anyone over and pretend to be a cop, but he got charged with it anyway. You might say his biggest crime was bothering a real police officer who was trying to speed with impunity. Number 2. The security officer who snapped. At Horace Mann Middle School in Florida, a security guard got into a fight with one of the students in August of 2021. The security officer, a grown man by the name of Antoine Ruffin, was arrested when he willfully and intentionally punched a student who refused to go to class. The unusual altercation was caught on video by another student, who saw the whole thing unfold. Finally, he lashed out and punched the student square in the chest. Nobody was injured, but this was obviously something that shouldn't have happened. The security guard, after very much overstepping his boundaries, is now facing charges of child abuse. And number 1, shooting a grandmother. It was February 1st, 2022, when security guard Victor Brown shot and killed an innocent grandmother who had been minding her own business in the street. Her name was Bobby Johnson, and she never saw it coming. The incident started at a Chicago liquor store where Victor worked as the store security. He was approached by a man who was no longer allowed in this particular place of business, and Victor told the guy to leave. But Victor also became belligerent and aggressive, putting his fists in the man's face. The man responded by firing a shot from a handgun he had concealed in his pocket. The bullet hit Victor in the leg, and seconds later, a shootout had erupted. Victor fell to the ground, pulled out his handgun, and started firing at the man as he ran away. Victor shot at least 20 live rounds as the guy fled down the block, shooting even as he crossed a busy intersection. One of these bullets happened to hit Bobby Johnson as she was walking down the street, killing her. In the aftermath, one innocent woman was left dead. The man who shot Victor is still at large, and the security guard has been charged with first-degree murder as a result of his recklessness. Would you rather be the security guard of a Walmart, a liquor store, or a McDonald's? Which do you think is more dangerous? Let us know in the comments, and thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next one.